Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor Ipshita Bansal from BPS Women's University, Sonipat, Haryana. Today we will be discussing about the module Mergers and Acquisition of the paper Strategic Human Resource Management. After studying this module, students will be able to understand HR roles in mergers and acquisition transactions, challenges faced by human resources during merger and acquisition transactions, phases in a merger and acquisition transactions, HR involvement before the merger and acquisition transaction, HR involvement after the merger and acquisition transition. So, what is merger and acquisition? Mergers and acquisitions is a general term that refers to the consolidation of companies or assets. While there are several types of transactions classified under the notion of merger and acquisitions, a merger means a combination of two companies to form a new company, while an acquisition is the purchase of one company by another company, in which no new company is formed. This module will enable participants to understand the role of human resource management during mergers and acquisitions. The module outlines the different phases of mergers and acquisitions and the role of HR during each phase. Mergers and acquisitions are tools businesses use to achieve organizational objectives. Tools that have profound impact on employees of the organizations at every level as two organizations attempt to integrate into one. A merger is generally defined as joining of two or more different organizations under one common owner and management structure. An acquisition is the process of one corporate entity acquiring control of another corporate entity by purchase, stock swap, or some other method. What is mergers and acquisition? Mergers and acquisition is a general term that refers to the consolidation of companies or assets. While there are several types of transactions classified under the notion of merger and acquisition, a merger means a combination of two companies to form a new company, as is seen in the pink organism, while an acquisition is the purchase of one company by another in which no new company is formed, as we can see with the help of yellow organism which is swallowing the smaller pink organism. In the picture also we can have a look at what acquisition is. Why mergers and acquisitions fail? An estimated 70% to 90% of all mergers and acquisition fail to achieve their anticipated strategic and financial objectives, often attributed to various HR related factors such as incompatible cultures, management styles, poor motivation and loss of key talent, lack of communication, diminished trust and uncertainty of long-term goals. Therefore, a lot of importance is given to managing people issues in the context of mergers and acquisitions, with an emphasis on the role of HR professionals who must be adept at recognizing potential problems, identifying solutions and persuading management to adopt them. 5 phases of the merger or acquisition transaction include: Phase 1, identifying buyers; Phase 2, securing third party services; Phase 3, preparing for transaction; Phase 4, negotiations, valuations and final agreement; and Phase 5, Implementation. Let's understand the phases in merger and acquisition transaction. Merger and acquisitions tend to go through some distinct phases. A brief summary of the phases and steps to familiarize HR professionals are outlined below. Phase 1. Identifying buyers. It involves identifying potential candidates that would be interested in merging with, buying or selling to the organization with the goal of bringing significant advantages to both parties. It is important to sign a non-disclosure agreement before sharing much information between companies. Non-disclosure agreements are not fail-safe, but they offer some legal protection and highlight the need for secrecy. An organization's management must also carefully decide, even with the signed NDA, how much information to disclose and at what stage of the process. An interested buyer usually wants to know more than the organization wants to share, and its representatives have to use discretion at every stage. Phase 2. Securing third-party services. It involves the legal, accounting, regulatory and technical aspects of completing the transaction. It is during this phase that third-party professional services are secured. For example, those of lawyers, accountants, investment bankers and merger and acquisition advisors. These individuals or groups are critical to the success of the transaction and will be involved in the development of the structure and content of the legal agreement. An HR professional might be involved in interviewing the third-party professional and negotiating an independent contractor agreement. Phase 3. Preparing for the transaction. Parties make sure their teams are briefed, ready and on the same page, and sign a letter of intent before they begin the due diligence process. It is important for parties to ensure that their legal documents, example option plans, board of director notes, NDAs, partnership agreements, benefit plans, etc., are organized and in good shape. The parties sign a letter of intent if they tentatively can agree on the priority issues involved in the transaction. A letter of intent is a document that seeks to provide some initial points of understanding and that binds the parties to keep the information discussed confidential. During the due diligence process, it is critical to read documents carefully to eliminate any surprises that could jeopardize the deal. Parties should decide up front how much information they will share during due diligence. Phase 4. Negotiations, valuations and final agreement. Regarding negotiation themselves, many tactics are employed and the right ones often depend on the types of organizations involved. Different industry sectors use different valuation metrics. For example, multiples of revenue, discounted cash flow, etc. These parties, financial advisors, both internal and external, generally control this aspect of the transaction. Assuming due diligence process has not uncovered any material issues that cause a reconsideration of the transaction, and assuming the price seems right, both parties draft, negotiate and approve the legal agreement. Regulatory and filing issues must be considered at this time. Implementation. In this phase, the two organizations are combined into one. New work groups are established and redundant employees are laid off. The corporate culture for the combined organization is established and communicated to all employees. HR professionals may be involved in formulating a new mission statement, vision statement, and possibly a value statement. Organizational policies and procedures will be revised and coordinated with significant input from HR professionals. Let's now understand the role of human resource managers or professionals in mergers and acquisition. The involvement of HR professionals at every step in the merger and acquisition process is overwhelming. Studies consistently show that most mergers and acquisitions fail, mainly because of people and culture issues. In the period leading up to and immediately following a significant transaction, a tendency exists for employees to begin considering their own personal situation. Questions usually contemplated include: where am I going? What do I want out of both my personal and business life? And will I like the new company and its management group? The longer the period of uncertainty lasts, the more attractive alternative employment becomes. To make things more difficult, the best and the brightest managers are ones immediately targeted by the recruiters attempting to lure them to other organizations. The loss of key employees can seriously erode the potential value of a transaction for the acquiring firm. Perhaps equally damaging and just as costly are those people who stay on the payroll but who emotionally check out and do not perform at their previous levels of productivity. If the process is not managed well, the company may end up with the employees who simply had the fewest alternatives. So, what should be HR's involvement before the merger and acquisition takes place? HR professionals typically play pivotal roles in an acquisition's core due diligence activity. During due diligence, information about talent and culture, along with typical assessments of employee benefit plans and liabilities, compensation programs, employment contracts and policies, legal exposure, and more can provide insights into the value of a property and its workforce, and can decrease the likelihood of unhappy and expensive surprises once the deal is complete. HR involvement before the merger and acquisition. HR professionals typically play pivotal roles in an acquisition's core due diligence activity. During due diligence, information about talent and culture, along with typical assessments of employee benefits, plans and liabilities, compensation programs, employment contracts and policies, legal exposure, and more can provide insights into the value of a property and its workforce, and can decrease the likelihood of unhappy and expensive surprises once the deal is complete. This can be seen with the help of the diagram. Analyzing clients' requirements, generating ideas, valuing companies, identifying potential partners, drawing up documentation, due diligence, supporting management, and conducting negotiations. What should be the human resource department's involvement after the transaction? The outdated view of HR as a purely administrative function rather than as a strategic one often results in HR professionals being excluded from many aspects of the M&A process, in which they could add significant value to the process. Having the necessary skill sets to effectively manage the integration, for example, knowledge in employee relations, communications, change management, and legal requirements, should gain the confidence of senior management in HR. Competency in these areas also should enable HR professionals to handle the complicated process of managing human resources during mergers and acquisitions. So, HR involvement after the transaction is creation of new policies to guide the new organization, retention of key employees, employee selection and downsizing, development of compensation strategies, creation of a comprehensive employee benefits programs, importance of cultural fit, technology and outsourcing decisions. HR involvement after the transaction. Creation of new policies to guide the new organization. To shape the culture of the newly merged organization, the employer must develop and communicate to employees a cogent people-related strategy. Such a strategy should include the development of key policies, rules and guidelines to govern employee behavior and related workplace expectations. Retention of key employees. To retain the key talent that will help make the new organization successful, management should communicate its intention to the star performers as early in the process as is legally possible. This means requesting access to conduct confidential interviews with key employees in advance of the actual closing date. Employee selection and downsizing. Early placement of management is a critical factor in beginning to stabilize the new organization. A major challenge for the acquiring company is in deciding who to retain, who to redeploy, and who to terminate, as well as effectively managing those processes. Development of compensation strategies. Depending on the circumstances of the deal and the compensation policies of the combining companies, HR will be likely to be share payment plans into a program that fits into the new organization. Creation of a comprehensive employee benefits program. HR will be required to link disparate employee benefits into a program that fits the newly formed organization or simply discard the existing plans and start over. Either way, the creation of a comprehensive employee benefits program is a complex undertaking and one that takes time. Communication. Effective communication involves providing information on the shared vision for the new company, the nature and progress of the integration and the anticipated benefits, and the outcomes and rough timelines for future decisions. Steps for a successful communication program during mergers and acquisition. First, establish multiple routes of communication. Example, one-on-one meetings, group sessions, newsletters, intranet updates. Second, focus on the themes of change and progress by highlighting projects that are going well and action items that are being delivered on time. Third, repeat the common themes of the merger and acquisition to increase employee understanding of the rationale behind the transaction. Fourth, provide opportunities for employee involvement and feedback. Fifth, ensure that employees understand there will be problems, but give a commitment that the problems will be identified and addressed as early as possible. Cultural fit. Cultural compatibility issues often arise when bringing together two or more cultures in the merger and acquisition process. Because culture encompasses the beliefs and assumptions shared by members of an organization and influences all areas of group life, the merger and acquisition integration always has a degree of misalignment, regardless of the perceived similarity between the two firms. Technology and outsourcing decisions. Managing HR technology and deciding which systems to keep or replace, as well as which functions to outsource, can be a highly complex undertaking. Making such decisions require that employers thoroughly assess the HR systems and people capabilities of both organizations. Technology integration must occur thoroughly and quickly enough that normal operations never appear disturbed to users. So, what are the challenges faced by HR professionals during merger and acquisitions? The consideration of a merger or acquisition usually comes packed with mixed feelings, including excitement, fear, uncertainty, enthusiasm, and resistance. These emotional reactions can occur at every level of the organization. How an organization deals with its employees before, during, and after the transaction can have a determinative impact on the success of the transaction. Both mergers and acquisitions present significant challenges to HR professionals. The merger and acquisition process requires management of both organizations to consider all implications of a proposed merger or acquisition before agreeing to one, which necessarily involves consideration of the people issues created by a proposed merger or acquisition. HR professionals are often involved in the process by advising management on human resource matters, including using surveys and other metrics to gather relevant data, identifying potential conflict or HR challenges between the two companies, integrating HR practices and company cultures after a merger and acquisition exercise, and managing talent decisions such as layoffs, to name a few. What are the challenges faced by HR during mergers and acquisitions? Some of them are outlined below. To maintain an internal status quo, to provide guidance to upper management from a people's perspective, discerning all aspects of the two separate organizations and the one combined organization that will be affected, communicating with employees at every step in the merger and acquisition process, devising ways to meld the two organizations most effectively and efficiently, dealing with reality related to merger and acquisitions, addressing ethical dilemmas involved, aligning the HR function to achieve the organization's strategic objectives. So, it's important to understand what are the trust busters in mergers and acquisitions, that is, the situations which leads to trust deficit among the employees. Organizations should never tell employees that everything will be business as usual. Employers should not attempt to sugarcoat matters with false promises. Once decisions are made about functions and people, the organization must treat those employees who will be negatively affected by the transaction with dignity, respect, and support. So, students, let's now summarize what we have studied in this module. The module began with an understanding of the meaning of mergers and acquisitions and the different phases that they are carried out in organizations. It explained the distinctive role of HR before and after the merger or acquisition. The module also highlighted the issues and challenges that are faced by HR as a function in general and by HR managers specifically. Thank you.